Hello and good morning to all of our Faith FM listeners right around the country and even across the ditch in New Zealand, to our friends over there. And welcome to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. If you're listening live, it's Thursday, the 21st of March, and we've just hit 11 o'clock here in the Melbourne studio, and I'm here this morning with Peter Watts. How you going, Peter?
Really great, Brad, and good morning to all the listeners. It's great to be back in the studio.
Absolutely. It's always an exciting thing to be in Melbourne in autumn because you have no clue what you're going to get.
Well, I like it. Today is particularly cool if you are still snuggled up in bed or in a very warm place. It's quite cool this morning. My wife and I went out walking this morning, and I said to Marie, it's kind of, this is the day I think that we've switched from warmer weather to cooler weather. It's not cold by any means. That's coming.
That's coming.
That's called winter. But I'm a four seasons. I grew up in the UK, so I'm a four seasons climate kind of person.
Lovely.
So we live at Warburton, out east of Melbourne, and it's very nice out there. But we do have the four seasons, and we like that. It's good. Yeah,
definitely.
Get the contrast.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful things about nature, I think. It's constantly changing, and sometimes if you live in a city, for example, you don't really see that quite as much. You might have the occasional tree down the road, but when you actually get out into nature, you see how much it changes, just week by week, day by day even. Yeah,
and even the animals and the birds and so forth. It's I count myself very lucky that I live where I do. Because you get to see that beauty. And, we're going to be talking a little bit about the creation today and all of that. But, I do enjoy seeing the leaves turning colour. Some of them are doing that in the valley already. But as the temperature, I think, is what actually makes that change, isn't it?
I believe so.
I think temperature changes and then some chemical reaction takes place in the plant. And,
it's something to do with the ground temperature, I believe. It's not that much to do with the air temperature.
Okay.
It says because the ground temperature changes very, very slowly comparatively.
Right, okay.
And so basically once the roots kind of hit a certain temperature,
they
start to go, all right, well, it's starting to get out of the warm weather, starting to get towards the cold weather, so we better start preparing now. Because I guess, that's the thing, right? You can have days in summer here in Melbourne, and even around the country, where you might have a really hot day and then a really cold day next. Yes. And if the tree was just relying on that initial air sort of temperature stimulus,
I suppose that's right.
Then they'd you'd have a tree dropping its leaves and have them all back and drop it.
Well, it's interesting because the Bible talks about summer and winter, right? Seasons, as long as the earth lasts, there's going to be summer and winter. And of course, there are two other seasons that are kind of the transitional seasons. So the transition from winter to summer is spring, and the transition from summer to winter is autumn. And so, they each, it's kind of like every place, every place has its own particular beauty, and you can find, good things in every place you go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as you said, we're actually going to be talking a bit about the environment today, and, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that, billions, hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars being spent around the world talking about climate change. Do we need to get rid of coal power? Do we need
fossil fuels?
Are fossil fuels bad? Are we bleaching the coral reef? Are we driving animals extinct? And
it's been a major, it's been a major news item, probably at least the last 20 years, you would say, and certainly has, featured on the horizon for the past 50 years or more.
Yep.
But yes, now it's a hot button topic, and it's something that politicians talk about, and obviously people are concerned about, and people go to rallies and protests and all sorts of things. And so the question I wanted to ask today, Brad, was in regards to the environment, is God green?
Oh, okay.
Is God green? And we're not talking about, has he got skin like the Incredible Hulk or something? That's not what I was thinking about. But is he environmentally friendly? Does God care about the environment? That's the question really we want to chat about today. And what is God's attitude toward the environment? What is his attitude I guess in terms of what does he want from us in that regard too.
Yep.
And so we're going to have a sort of broad sweep across the scriptures to find out what God says about this subject, and we will not be able to cover everything.
Of course.
We've got an hour today, but we're going to scratch the surface and see what the Bible says about it, and where are we today and what the priorities are today and all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to dive right in, and perhaps a really good place to start is Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, which I can probably recite without even looking up, but I'm going to let you read it because it gives you something to read instead of me just talking all the time.
Sure. It's a pretty well-known verse, as you say. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
All right. So this is an important verse from the perspective of the whole, setting the table, if you like, having the whole worldview. In other words, when we're talking about the environment, what are we talking about?
Yep.
We're talking about the natural world that God created. And that's an important starting point.
Yep.
Because if we have a different belief, and I used to have a different belief, I used to believe in molecules to man evolution.
Yep.
And so I believed that the natural world got here naturally all by itself. And I thought that plants and animals and human beings all got here by long processes of small changes over long periods of time, and that's how we got the natural world.
Yep.
And then in my mid-20s, I moved from that position, which I had been educated in. I went to state school, and that was very much a part of my upbringing. But then in my mid-20s, I had an encounter with God, began to explore God, explore the Bible, and then I sort of moved my position to one of, well, God is the creator. He is the account that we read about in Genesis chapter 1 is, I believe, an accurate account. I believe it's a legitimate account. I don't believe it's a fairy story. And in fact, there's quite a structure and an order to the way in which God created.
Yep.
It actually makes sense the way that he created. He said, let there be light. And then he causes the earth to be covered in water, and he makes the water above separate from the water beneath, and we have an atmosphere, and then he causes dry land to appear, and plants appear on that dry land, and so forth. So he's creating an environment, and somebody once said, when you look at the first 3 days of creation, he forms the environment, and then in the next 3, 4, 5, and 6, he fills that environment.
Okay.
So forming and filling. And so, but the point is that if God created, then of course he cares about the creation because it's his creation.
Well,
but
I guess, when you think about some other religious views, I suppose, though, there are gods who do create, but then they are distant.
Right.
So like in the Islamic worldview, for example, the belief is that Allah created the world and the universe, but that he's not present. He's kind of staying back and he doesn't really engage. And so... Yeah,
and there's a deist view of God, isn't there, where God set it all in motion, created it and walked away and left it to run on its own. So, yes, that's true. So it doesn't... I suppose you're quite right. It's not a given that God cares. We are going to discover as we read on that God cares. But you're right. It's not a given that God cares just because he created.
We can make things and not care
leave,
about them.
Leave them in the back shed or they're out on the curb before you know it. So that's true. But the God of the Bible is one who is creator, and he's also one who is carer. And we might say sustainer. Right? He sustains his creation. Not only does he create, but he sustains the creation and he cares about it. And more particularly, there's a verse in Psalm 24:1 that says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So it's just talking about the fact that God owns the world and everything in it. He made the natural world and the living things. And then, of course, there's an interesting verse. Why did God make the earth? And so, actually, it tells us Yeah, well, that's right. Well, if you look at Isaiah 45:18, might get you to, you don't have that in your notes because I just added it.
That's fine.
But,
Isaiah 45:18.
45:18, if you read that, it actually tells you why he created the earth.
It says, "For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited. He says, I am the Lord, and there is no other."
All right. So God says here he formed the earth to be inhabited. And so by butterflies or, by deer, cats and dogs, yes, but this is written for a purpose, and it's written in order that people might read it and understand it, and those people would have to be humans because other creatures can't read and write. So when he says that he formed it not in vain, he formed it to be inhabited, it's because he made it for us, essentially. It's our playground, essentially. For those who have ever had children, most of the time we have children because we want them and we want to pour out our love upon them. And we hope they love us in return. And we like to see our children play, unless you're a particularly mean parent and have no interest in your children playing. But children learn through play. And so we will sometimes either create a playground in the backyard or we'll take them to a playground and let them play. And so essentially, the earth is God's playground. And the first two humans, Adam and Eve, God created. He put them in the garden. We're going to come back to that in a moment because there's a specific word he gave as well in regards to the creation that I want to touch on later. But he puts Adam and Eve in this paradisical garden, and he wants them to enjoy it, to learn things about him from it, to learn all about the animals and the plants and so forth. And so it was their playground, I guess, essentially.
Fascinating stuff. You're listening to A Light in the Dark. If you're listening live, it's Thursday, the 21st of March at 11:11 in Melbourne time. We're going to hear now One Glory Would Take My Hand. Remember, you can text in to us here at A Light in the Dark at any time on 04888 808 31. That's 04888 808 31. Enjoy the song. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Till we reach that place where I call home. see the cross that lifted me. I bore your shame and agony. Lay down your burdens on me. I tasted death to set you free, so we could live eternally. Lay down your burdens on me. I promise yours, only believe. Lord, I believe. I receive. Your plan for me. I am yours, so take my hand and walk with me.
You just heard One Glory with Take My Hand from the album Agape, All My Religion. There you go. You're listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM with Peter and with Brad. And today we're talking a bit about creation and the environment, you know, the earth, everything around us.
Is God green? Is the question.
Is God green? You know, sometimes, you know, you don't want to necessarily delve into political questions and that sort of thing.
Well, that's it.
I've had conversations with people before, and they say, well, you know, if Jesus was alive today, he would be an environmental protester. He would be out with these guys who are gluing themselves to the street and this and that and the other. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Jesus was not political in the sense that we are. He was political in the sense that he had the kingdom of God that he was sharing with people. But he often tried to stay quite uninvolved from earthly politics.
Well, it is interesting when he said, my kingdom is not of this world, which is an interesting statement. But yeah, so when I'm asking the question today, is God green? I guess a lot of people may have in the back of their mind, the Green Party.
That's right. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm probably aiming at is not the political arm, if you like, but more particularly, is God environmentally friendly?
Yeah.
You know, and to what extent and so forth. So we're exploring that today.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, for us it's important to make that distinction between I care about the environment, therefore I'm a political activist,
right,
as opposed to I care about the environment, therefore I
will do my bit.
Yeah.
Or I care about the environment, therefore I won't throw my trash out of the car window as I speed by.
I won't pour my used engine oil down the drain type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are, I suppose, different levels of care when we talk about that, and we're going to dive into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Did we want to put out the listener question now or later?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea. So I think the question we're going to give to people was, you know, when it comes to the world that God's created, what is actually your favorite part of it?
Yeah.
You know, and when it comes to the environment, maybe, you know, we can think about things even more broadly, because I know one of the things I love most about what God has created is seeing the stars.
Right.
And, you know, we can...
That's a fair way away.
Yeah, well, it's a fair way away, but at the same time, you know, we think about looking up into the night sky these days, and half the time you're going, satellite, something, junk, space station, and as opposed to, oh, look at all these beautiful stars. And, you know, even when we're in the city, often we don't see them. Yeah. And there's places in Australia and around the world that get dedicated as night sky, dark sky reserves, because there's so much light pollution we don't even get to see it.
Yeah.
And that, you know, having too much light can mess up animals and our circadian rhymthms and all sorts of things. So, yeah.
So which part of God's creation do you appreciate most?
Yep.
And they send that on, send it into...
Yeah, text us in on 0488 808 31. That is 0488 808 31. And if you haven't got that number saved in your phone yet, make sure you do save it in your phone, because it's the same number that you can use a little bit later in the show to text in and claim today's free offer, which we're going to be telling you more about a little bit later on.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive back into it. We were talking about the fact that God had made Adam and Eve and placed them in the Garden of Eden, this paradise, and that this was essentially their playground. Of course, these were adults, not children, but they were the children of God.
Yep.
And this was a new world to explore. I mean, can you imagine seeing all those animals and plants for the first time? It would have been wonderful. Seeing, for Adam and Eve to meet each other would have been an amazing thing.
Think about the joy that you feel every time you go to the zoo and you see all those animals. It's like, oh, that lion's so cool. Even if you've seen it before.
I thought you were going to say, think about how you feel every time you wake up in the morning and you see your wife. And then you said the zoo.
Oops.
And I thought, hang on. You took that in a different direction.
Comment on different people's relationships.
Not indeed. So, but in Genesis 1:26 to 28, you've got that there. Have a read of that for us, Brad.
Genesis 1:26 to 28 says, Then God said, Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Then God blessed them and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth.
All right. So a couple of words there in verse 28 where he says, have dominion. He says, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. So he's telling them to be fruitful and multiply. So God is not, he's not saying be careful how many kids you have. He wants them to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, that is, bring it under your control, and have dominion over it. And then he lists all the different creatures, the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the creatures on the earth. So he gives them dominion. If effectively God gives them the earth as a wedding present, he's saying you are going to be the managers of this creation.
Yep.
Okay, so that's quite a task. And then if you go to, it's quite a responsibility God gives them. If you go to Genesis 2 and verse 15, it's actually, there's a specific job that God gave to man when he created him. In 2:15 it says, Then the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and keep it. So evidently, God created human beings to interact with the environment, to tend and to keep it. So there was going to be a responsibility for managing the environment. And we'd also read before about subduing it and having dominion over it.
Yep.
Okay, so certainly God cares about the environment in as much as it is our backyard. He created it as our backyard. He didn't create the environment and then create man as an afterthought. I thought, I'll probably create a couple of other people. No, we read before that he formed it to be inhabited. So the idea is God created the earth for the purpose of it being a home for mankind.
Yep.
And we get to enjoy all these incredible plants and animals and the environment that God has made, and it's still amazingly wonderful.
Absolutely. Yep.
Even though the Bible says it's been cursed 3 times. Now, you'll notice so far we've really just talked about Genesis 1:1, Genesis 1:26-28, and Genesis 2:15. This is all before the fall. Okay, the fall makes a difference.
It does,
in terms of the creation, because we find that the fall things change, and we're going to talk about the 3 curses that came on the environment.
All right.
But I just want to point something out here before we go any further. Yes, God cares about the environment because it's our home and he gave us that job of tending and caring for it. But think about this. A creationist has more reason for caring for the environment than does an evolutionist. And I'm speaking here as someone who used to be an evolutionist and now is a creationist. Because according to evolution, we got here through survival of the fittest, and because other species were weaker and became extinct. That's the evolutionary picture right? So that you've got death and struggle, survival of the fittest. Those who are better adapted will survive. Those who are maladapted will not survive the changing environment of planet Earth.
Yep.
And so many species have become extinct through the passage of time because of the evolutionary process, right? Whereas for creation, for a creationist, we recognize that God made the world in the first place. There was a reason he made it. It's our backyard. It's our home.
Yep.
And therefore it makes sense that we would want to look after that.
It's actually some sort of a moral imperative.
A moral imperative.
Yep.
Because and this is something I think that we can pick up from our indigenous friends, is that they have a real relationship with the land.
Sure, yeah.
Right? That I think God intended for Adam and Eve to have in the beginning.
Yep.
You know, and that I think Westerners, and we've sort of lost that a little bit, that the world, we are part of this world, the world is part of who we are, in the sense that we have this symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and I think equally, because maybe in the West more so, or, I think about even here in Melbourne compared to in a country town or something, for example. In a big city, you live in a man-made world. You're surrounded by man-made things.
Yes.
As opposed to when you are outside of a city, suddenly you are surrounded by creation.
Correct.
It's a lot more present in your life.
And I think that has an impact. I grew up in a big city, the second city in England, which is Birmingham. So huge population. And in fact, you can drive from there to other cities, and you don't leave the city to get to the other city. It's just city. And so there's a cluster of cities really, all around there. And so I was used to buildings and, the concrete jungle and so forth. Whereas I've been very, very lucky in most of the last 20 years. I haven't lived in a major city. I've certainly visited them.
Yep.
But I haven't had to live in a major city. I've always been on the outskirts or in a rural situation or a country town. And it does make a difference to your outlook on life, I think. It makes a difference to your mental health, I think, that you get to see the green and the blue sky and so forth. But, so I think that as someone who believes in God, if you believe in God, you believe in the Bible, then I think that gives you a natural care for the environment that is different to an evolutionist. And if you think about it, why should an evolutionist care if the fittest survive and the weaker ones don't? According to evolution, some species will die out because they could not adapt. And we'll come back to that point in a moment, and then we're going to dive into what changes occurred on planet Earth because of the fall. So we'll come back to that after the break. Yep.
Yeah, sure. You're listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM right across Australia and, all around the world. If you're listening online or tuned into a podcast, we're very stoked to have you here with us this morning. If you are listening live, it's Thursday, the 21st of March at about 11:30. We're going to hear now Watermark with You Are My Stronghold. And remember, we'd love to hear you text in on 0488 808 31 and tell us what's your favourite part of creation. 0488 808 31. Stick around, because after this song, we're going to be sharing with you a little bit more about today's free offer. See you soon.
Lord, you are my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear if you are near? And Lord, you are my peace when there is war all around me. And even here inside me, I will have no fear. Oh, you are
Welcome back to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. You just heard Watermark with You Are My Stronghold from their album All Things New. And I mentioned before we went to the break that I was going to share a little bit more about our free offer today. And it's actually a DVD. We like giving away lots of books, but today's offer is a DVD called The Case for a Creator. And maybe you've heard of Lee Strobel before, Peter?
Lee Strobel, I do. I have a number of his books. I've seen a couple of videos with him. I've seen his testimony. So, yeah.
He's a very good writer. He used to be, he still is, an investigative journalist.
For the Chicago Tribune.
That's right, yeah. And he was previously an atheist, and he decided to say, all right, well, let me investigate the evidence for whether God is real. And, as a tough old-fashioned journalist, he went and interviewed the best people and tried to find the best evidence he could and came to the conclusion that, there is a God out there.
Yeah.
And equally, this DVD that we're giving away today, The Case for a Creator, was him doing the same sort of thing, saying, all right, if I look at the evidence, using my investigative journalistic skills, does it seem as though there is a God who did create the universe and the earth that we live in? Or is it just appeared from nowhere, or it's always been here, or it evolved, or whatever it might be? So it's a really interesting short film that you can watch, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So The Case for a Creator. And look, let's give away the code word for this now, because we want to make sure as many people as we can get today's free offer. So if you're interested in getting a copy of this DVD, The Case for a Creator, all you need to do is pull out your phone, and we're going to want to text today's code word, which is ALD32. So ALD32. And text that to our show number, which is 0488 808 31. And you'll get a copy of The Case for a Creator DVD. So one more time, that is ALD32. And you'll text that code word to our show number 0488 808 31. Now, if you missed the code word or you missed the show number at the moment, don't worry, we'll be sharing it again a little bit later on in the show. But right. Peter, let's get back into this.
All right. So as we mentioned before that God as creator, he cares about the environment. He wants us to care for the environment because it's our backyard. Mm-hmm. Then we talked about the contrast, with if you are, you talk about the political arm, we were talking about the Green Party and so forth. Many of them, I'm sure almost all of them, would be evolutionists.
Okay.
In terms of the fact that I guess most people in the West are evolutionists in terms of their worldview.
Yeah.
But the idea that because of the idea of survival of the fittest, then there are going to be species that don't make it, that become extinct. And interestingly enough, Charles Darwin, in his book in 1859, many people remember it as The Origin of Species, but the actual full title of the book is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favoured Races in the Struggle for Life. So here he's saying the preservation of favoured races. In other words, some races are going to make it and others are not because there's a struggle for life. And that's the whole point of natural selection. It selects those that have, the best qualities for surviving in this particular environment.
And from that, from that worldview, you have no way of saying, oh, well, that's good or bad.
Exactly.
Because it's just a case of, oh, no, this is just what happens. We don't have a choice.
That is the excellent point that I'm trying to make, is that there's no real right or wrong to whether this creature doesn't make it or this creature does. And that would go for human beings too. If you believe in molecules to man evolution, you don't believe there is a God, then there is no moral reason why we have to save people, or try and preserve their life. This is why the worldview's perspective is very important. What is our worldview? How are we viewing the world through what lens? And so we're looking at this from a biblical perspective, and we notice then after God has created and put man in it and told him to have dominion. In Genesis 3:17 to 19, notice what God says. I'll get you to read that.
Sure. It says, Then to Adam he said, Because you have heeded the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree of which I commanded you, saying, You shall not eat it, cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. both thorns and thistles it will bring forth for you, and you will eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return.
All right. So these are very serious words. These are part of the consequence. And of course, God has spoken to the serpent. He then speaks to Adam. He speaks to Eve. And so he talks to all three of them. But in these passages, he's saying there are consequences for the actions that you've taken in separating from me. So as we draw away from God, we change, as evidenced by Adam's reaction, but also the environment changed. And I don't think we always fully appreciate that we actually, that because we were the ones that had dominion over the earth, in separating from God, we lost something, but the earth then lost something too. And when it says thorns and thistles, it shall grow for you, and cursed is the ground for your sake. And it says, in toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. It seemed that it was going to be harder work to get food from the earth. It seemed like before the fall, you just pluck it off the trees and, your dinner was ready. But here it was going to take more effort. And this is the first of three curses that are occurring in the early part of Genesis that tell us that the earth has experienced significant degradation since it was the pristine paradise that God created in the first place. The next one is in Genesis 4:12. So if you go to Genesis 4:12, and this is the story of Cain and Abel. And because Cain ultimately killed Abel, his brother, there was a consequence. And you read about it in Genesis 4:12.
It says, when you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth.
All right. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield. So God had talked to Adam and said it's going to be sort of harder for you to get food from the ground. Here again, some many years later, Cain has killed Abel, and one of the consequences of his spilt blood, because God says, where's your brother? And it says, look at verse 11. I should have probably put that in. It says, so now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So the spilling of somebody else's blood, that has also somehow changed the nature of the world we live in. And then, of course, the final one in this particular sequence is in Genesis 7, where we have the account of the flood. And if you'd just like to read verse 23 there, Brad.
It says, so he destroyed all living things which were on the face of the earth, both man and cattle, creeping thing and bird of the air. They were destroyed from the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark remained alive.
All right. So here in the flood, which you can read all about the flood, Genesis 6 through 9, the flood devastated the entire globe in a way that, we can still see the evidence of in a lot of the geological layers of the earth. And we still find marine fossils on high mountains. And, of course, mountains are higher now than they were in the past because of continental drift and all of those kind of things.
I actually remember when I was a kid, someone showing me like a fossilized seashell that they had found when they were walking around the Australian Alps.
There you are.
And he was saying, how did this get here? Was it
Australian Alps?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are the Australian Alps?
Well, Kosciuszko.
There you go.
That whole alpine region. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think, if I'm right, that Mount Everest is growing a few millimetres every year. So if you're ever planning to go climb it, get there soon because it's just going to be taller tomorrow. But that's because the mountains have been pushed up by the movement of the continents and so forth. So point being that the earth has been cursed 3 times. And so the world we live in is not the one God created. And what the idea of this is that man's actions have had an effect on the environment, a detrimental effect. And what's interesting about that is God has not removed that. God hasn't said, no, I'll make it all better again, or it's not going to have any effect. It's not going to grow thorns and thistles. It won't be harder for you. We don't have to destroy the world with a flood. all of these environmental changes have occurred, and God has allowed them, or in some respects has participated in them with the flood, so that the world we see is different to the one that was there in paradise. And all of this is because of sin, which I equate with selfishness. Okay? So the selfish thoughts and actions of mankind have made a difference to the environment. Now, we can see that in the scale today. You know, if there is widespread pollution from a major company, for instance, that is usually because the company is motivated more by money and profits than they are by care for the environment, so we say. So therefore, there's an element of human selfishness in that. It's not just the process by which they're making whatever product they're making, but it's actually the decisions of the human beings who are actually controlling the company, and so forth. So we can see that is the case. The Bible now talks about the world, and when I say now, this is like 2,800 years ago, in the book of Isaiah. We have Isaiah 51 and verse 6. And so 2,700 years ago, the Bible had this to say, and maybe you'd like to read that, Isaiah 51:6.
All right, just give me one sec.
If you can find it. So Isaiah 51:6, he's sort of, God is talking here through the prophet Isaiah, and this is what he says back then.
It says, "Look up your eyes to the heavens and look on the earth beneath. For the heavens will vanish away like smoke, the earth will grow old like a garment, and those who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation is forever, and my righteousness will not be abolished."
All right, so here he's saying the earth will grow old like a garment. And that's 2,500 years ago, so it's at least 2,500 years older now than it was then. And God is saying that this is what's going to happen to the world. And I think that we see that to a significant extent.
Yeah, absolutely. You're listening to A Light in the Dark here on Faith FM. I hope you're enjoying today's show. If you didn't catch the free offer that we had for you today, a DVD copy of The Case for a Creator, stick around because after this song we're going to be sharing the code word for you again. Right now we're going to hear Melissa Otto with Goodbye Old Man. We'll be back in just a minute.
I walked in liberty. I thought your treasures would make me happy. They were the very things that binded me. Goodbye, old man. You promised you had what would fill me. They were the very things that robbed me, leaving my heart completely empty. Goodbye, old man. Goodbye, old man. I hope not to see you again. I don't want to be your friend. Goodbye, old man. The old has gone, behold the new has come. With you I never did have fun. Goodbye, old man. I thought I walked in liberty. I thought your treasures would make me happy. They were the very things that binded me. Goodbye, old man. You promised you had what would fill me. They were the very things that robbed me, leaving my heart completely empty. Goodbye, old man. Goodbye, old man. I hope not to see you again. I don't want to be your friend. Goodbye, old man. The old has gone, behold the new has come. With you I never did have fun. Goodbye, old man. God gave him who knew no sin to become sin for us, that we might be reconciled to our Father now. I am in Christ, and in Christ I am free. His law is the law of liberty.
Welcome back. You just heard Melissa Otto with Goodbye Old Man from her album Opened. Hey, I mentioned before the song that we were going to share with you one more time the code word for today's free offer, which is a DVD copy of The Case for a Creator with Lee Strobel. And if you'd like to get your hands on this, all you need to do is pull out your phone and text a code word to our show number. The code word is ALD32, and the show number is 0488 808 31. So that is ALD32, and text it to our show number 0488 808 31. All right, let's get back into Genesis.
Okay, well, yes. Well, we've gone past Genesis now.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
We're going to Romans 8:22. So we're looking at what the Bible says about the creation now. 2,700 years ago, in Isaiah, probably 2,800 years ago, he says the earth will grow old like a garment.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Romans 8:22, there's another verse that's interesting that I'll get you to read.
Sure. It says, "For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now."
Okay, so this verse is saying that the creation is groaning under the weight of whatever it is we've been putting on it.
Yep.
And again, it's the idea that we are having an effect on the natural world somehow. And so what should we do about this? So we care about the environment because it's our backyard. But the Bible also says in Ephesians 4:26, be angry and do not sin. In other words, it's possible to be angry about things that are bad or wrong. Mm-hmm. It's possible to be angry about abused children or a beaten wife or, all that kind of stuff. It's possible to be angry about that. But you also don't want to let that anger push you into a place where you're sinning against God.
Yep.
And so we might be angry about the environment being degraded, but then what should we be doing about that? Like I said before, I think as Christians we should behave in a responsible manner, the way that we live. But if there's a cause that I want to put all of my energies towards, it's going to be the one that God calls me to put those energies into.
Sure.
And so, for instance, when we think of the natural world and we think of the fact that we mentioned earlier, God created it for human beings. Jesus himself, Matthew 10:29-31, he says, you are of more value than many sparrows. He says, when a sparrow falls to the ground, not a sparrow falls to the ground without God noticing.
Yep.
God knows. And if you imagine it from God's perspective, by the way, God created life to live, not to die. And he intended that we should live forever and that the animals in our environment would live forever too. I'm sure that was the case.
Yep.
But now animals die, birds die, sparrows die, and not one of them dies without God noticing. But Jesus says, you are of more value than many sparrows. So it's just putting into perspective where God's value is, and this is Jesus speaking. Then, of course, Jesus in Matthew 12:12, he says, I want to read that one because I don't want to just paraphrase it and get it wrong. But in 12:12, maybe you can read that if you get there.
Of how much more value then is a man than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath.
All right, so in this one, there is a man on Sabbath who has a withered hand. And Jesus, they bring him to him, the church leaders, and they're sort of saying, is it right to heal a man on the Sabbath? And he's saying, well, if you had a sheep in a ditch, wouldn't you pull it out on the Sabbath? Or would you just leave it there? Well, of course you'd pull it out. And he's saying of how much more value then is a man than a sheep. So Jesus is expressing here that there is an order, there is a level of value that he places on certain things. So there are sparrows and there are sheep and then there are human beings. And unlike some who might say, well, the cockroaches have as much right to roam the earth as humans do, I would beg to differ. I think that humans have a much higher status in God's mind than do the cockroaches.
And we saw that in Genesis where God explicitly, unlike everything else, right, unlike the rest of creation, he says that he creates man in his image.
Correct.
So in that sort of way, to God, we are more valuable than plants,
Exactly.
animals, or even, the sun or the moon.
Indeed, absolutely.
Because we are created in his image, and
Correct.
that's very unique.
Yes, and that's true. And so in that sense, we are his children. We're like his children.
Yep.
And so he feels differently about humans than he does the other animals and plants. And indeed, as we said before, he created the animals and plants for us. He wanted them to be for our enjoyment, and this is why we want to care for them. If we destroy them all, they won't be able to give us enjoyment anymore.
That's true, yeah.
Okay, but also I wanted to just go to John 3:16 through 18, and just pick up the words here from Jesus. So maybe you could read that for us, 3:16 to 18.
It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn it, but that the world through him might be saved. He who believes in him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God."
All right. So the point of this is, why did Jesus come into the world? He came in to save human beings.
Yeah.
That's what he came to save. And so there is a international ministry called Save the Children. It was founded in the UK in 1919. And in fact, I just coincidentally saw a headline about that ministry in Gaza currently at the moment. But you see, some people would say, well, save the whales or save the trees or save the koalas. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that.
Yep.
I'm an animal lover myself. I love the environment. I love being in the countryside.
Yep.
And I am keen to preserve the beauty of nature. So there's nothing wrong with that. But God's priority is to save the children. And that would be the point I would make. It's not that we should be have a disregard for the natural world.
Yep.
It's not that we should be, just flagrantly being irresponsible. Not at all. I think we have a personal responsibility to care for the environment. But if there's a mission in life that I want to pursue, it's going to be the one that Jesus pursued, and that was to save people.
Yep.
And so I think that's important. When Jesus was speaking in Luke 19:10, he says, "The Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." That he was his mission.
Yep.
And I believe that should be our mission. And, as Christians, we care about the natural environment that God created, but the mission of the church and the greatest challenge is the saving of souls. And when we think about it, the Bible tells us prophetically, we're not there yet, but in the book of Revelation, it tells us that when the 7 last plagues fall, that a number of things will occur, and all the creatures in the sea are going to die, is one of the things that it says.
Yep.
And so what I'm saying is the world will get worse before it gets better. And like I said, as people who are responsible Christians, we shouldn't be trying to make the world a worse place. We should be trying to make it a better place. But at the end of the day, it's the saving of souls. We are not going to turn this world back into the paradise God had in the Garden of Eden. That's the thing. We can't do that, but God can. The last verse I really want us to look at is going to be in 2 Peter chapter 3. And I just want us to maybe think about this. 2 Peter chapter 3, and it's 9 through 13. And I'll get you to read this, Brad, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure. It says, "The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long-suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. The day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat? Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells."
All right. So here Peter is pointing out that Jesus is going to come back. And why hasn't he come back? Because he's not willing that any should perish. He's leaving the doors of mercy open wide.
Yep.
But at some point he will come back, and when he does, the earth is going to meet a fiery end. Okay. And that is because there's a lot of pollution in the world. There's a lot of stuff that, needs to be combusted.
Yep.
And so God's going to have the incinerator situation where he burns up all the rubbish, as it were. But it says there in 2 Peter 3:13, nevertheless we, according to his promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. There will be another paradise. There will be another Garden of Eden. We read in Revelation 21 and 22 about the tree of life back in the garden. And we will be restored to paradise. But that will be after this whole episode of sin and sorrow has come to an end. And so is God green? Yes, he is. He cares about the environment. He cares about our happiness, which is why he created the environment. We have acted in ways that have spoilt that environment. We continue to do so. We know that the world will get worse before it gets better. There is going to be a restoration of paradise, but only God is going to be able to bring that about. And as far as our mission today, whilst we do love the whales and the koalas and the trees, the bottom line is Jesus came into the world to save people.
Yep.
And that's what he wants us to be about too.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you, Peter. It's been a really interesting show today. I've really enjoyed it. One more time, if you are interested in getting a copy of today's free offer, which is a DVD of The Case for a Creator, you can text the code word ALD32 to our show number 0488 808 31. Thanks for listening to A Light in the Dark today. Stay tuned to Faith FM, and we'll catch you again same time next week.